The machine that has revolutionized transportation. The machine that changed the world. The automobile, commonly known as the car, though it comes in different forms, is an essential part of all our lives, allowing us to travel with potent competence. How do you get to work? How do you get to school? A restaurant, a museum, a stadium, your friend's house. It's all by car. But how did you even get a car? Not by a dealership, but by the drive and passion of a man of the name Henry Ford. This useful appliance was once thought of as a reason to ostracize the wealthy, has now evolved into a necessity in life. However, to comprehend our discussion, let's go back to January 29th, 1886, Mannheim, Germany. Carl Benz was putting on the final touches of an invention he had dedicated himself to for the last 18 years, an invention called the Motorwagen. This would gradually evolve into the diesel engine Mercedes-Benz 260D, to the first hybrid car, the Lohner Porsche Mixte, and receive many other upgrades, but ultimately leading to the vehicle we can all recognize, the automobile. But even though Benz invented the car, his contributions are close to null compared to those of Henry Ford. Why Henry Ford, though, you might say? Why not Rudolf Diesel for his invention of the diesel engine, or Carl Benz who worked so hard to create the Motorwagen? On the day of December 1st, in 1913, Henry Ford fine-tuned the assembly line, which would have a profound impact not just on his own life, but also on the course of history. By choosing to fully adopt the assembly line method for manufacturing his groundbreaking Model T, he set in motion a chain of events that made cars more affordable and accessible to the public. This crucial choice ushered society into an era of progress in transportation, unknowingly creating a turning point in history. Ford's innovative approach not just solidified the automobile as an invention, but also cemented its place as an essential aspect of everyday life in modern times. Well, a young and unexpected farmer, Henry Ford was now known as a lazy worker, always making excuses to leave and then disappearing for the rest of the afternoon. He despised farm work with a passion. He thought of it as repetitive, humdrum, and physically taxing. Until one day, he saw the steam engine. At 16, Henry left his farm for Detroit. Detroit was becoming enthralling, on its way for the title, Motor City. Henry Ford decided to try his hand at the car-making industry, forming the Detroit Automobile Company. When the company failed, Ford tried again, forming the Henry Ford Company, envisioning a success. However, the newly created company failed once again. After a duration of creating race cars, hiring crazed maniacs, winning car races, and gaining recognition, Henry Ford created the massively successful company, the Ford Motor Co. Although Ford looked like he was on a winning streak, Ford Motor Company was still only a competitor, not a top competitor. He knew to take down a large powerhouse company such as General Motors and Chrysler, he needed something new, something innovative, something the world has never seen before. For years, Ford remodeled the Model T year after year. His speedy progress seemingly halted and would become like any other car company. Ford knew his goal for this company, his long-time dream, to get the car to the middle class. He knew he had to produce automobiles at an unprecedented scale, and his assembly line would take him there. Ford got his idea for an assembly line from a meatpacking facility. He was invited to the facility to check out their production. But something else happened. One of Ford's advisors stumbled across how efficiently the meat was being disassembled. He realized that if you had a line of workers, each doing the same task over and over again while moving the product between different stations of disassembly, they could increase output of the product. With this, Ford thought that they could assemble things just as efficiently as they disassembled things. And soon enough, the Model T's entire production, wheels, engines, and bodies, were all made on the assembly line. Utilizing the flywheel magneto, a newer version of the ignition magneto, he vastly improved upon the car assembly line. Because this new magneto, unlike the old one, was big enough to be mass-produced, it allowed Ford to complete the car on the assembly line. With this new upgrade, it changed the amount of productivity from a measly 25 cars per day to a whopping 1,000 in a single day. Another factor in this big difference was the fact that Henry Ford got one supplier instead of many, so that all parts arrived at the same time, instead of wasting time waiting for one part to arrive. Additionally, the first car entirely mass-produced on the assembly line, the Model T, sold very well with 15 million models produced. Before moving on to many better models, but they were based on the Model T and ultimately made the company very successful. One invention turned the Model T from $850 to only $260 in mere months. However, only a decade after the assembly line, though, it was a miracle for the company. Something else happened. Because the work was very monotonous, exhausting, and physically taxing, many employees quit. They thought that the payroll was moderate, yet the work was overtaxing. Ford thought long and hard before coming to his next decision. Something that changed the course of the automobile history for the future of working conditions for lower and middle class people. The $5 workday. The $5 workday was revolutionary in Ford Motor Company's success. Ford doubled the workers in his company's earnings per day, while also decreasing their work from 9 hours to 8, and changed their workdays from Monday to Saturday to Monday to Friday. He also gave his workers better benefits, such as health insurance and paid time off. This was revolutionary for the world because for the time, companies had a 24-hour work routine, making workers work in 8-hour shifts. Even today, we can still feel the impact of the $5 workday, with many hospitals and emergency services enacting on the same schedule Ford planned a century ago. All industrial companies were producing even more effectively, while the conditions of the workers were very livable with a good wage, still maintaining the agenda of being very cheap and affordable, with their targeted market towards the massive audience of the middle class instead of the marginalized rich, and all the companies had Ford to thank for that. The legacy Henry Ford left behind is incomprehensible. Other car companies at that time also tried to make their cars cheaper to capitalize on the craze of buying cheaper cars, causing cars to be affordable for the middle class and lower class. To encapsulate the impact, Henry Ford caused a significant turning point in history and revolutionized transportation for the general public by inventing the Model T and applying the assembly line to effectively manufacture automobiles by cutting down on production costs and time, ultimately leading him to being known as the father of the modern age.